have a very special guest coming to chat with us all about the practical tips for creating a healthier, toxin free life. And this is something that, is really important to me. And I know that it can also be extremely overwhelming. So I have the pleasure of having Suzi, one of my friends and also Faster Way clients, on today to talk more about this because she is the expert in this area. And here she is. So I'm going to go ahead and get her on. Hopefully. Come on. Sorry, guys. Oh, here we go.
Hey,
Hi. How are you?
good. How are you, Lauren?
I'm doing great. Thanks for joining me today. I am so excited about this
I
conversation.
am
Um,
too.
I just kind of really briefly told everybody what we were talking about, but we'll kind of go back over that. Um, so this is my friend Suzi, who also happens to be a Faster Way client, who is also Girl Gone Green on Instagram. And I'm so excited to be able to introduce her to you all. She is really the expert in this area of, living a toxin-free life, and that is something that I think is so important for all of us to start thinking about, especially in today's world. But it can also be so overwhelming. And, this is something that I have honestly kind of going back 10, 12 years ago, started to kind of put into practice in my own life and my own home and with different things when I started using Young Living essential oils. Okay, so many, many years ago. And that kind of opened my eyes to more of a natural approach when it comes to, beauty products and household products and, what we breathe in the air and candles versus, doing things a little bit more naturally. And so over the years, I've kind of trickled in some stuff. I've kind of gone backwards, to be honest, and, let the old things slip back in. But it's always been on my mind. And, not to make this too much about me, but recently, after the passing of my sister to cancer, it's also just, made me want to be more diligent,
Mhm.
not just for myself, but for my kids,
Yeah.
in cleaning up our air and what we, consume and what we put on our skin and different things. And so that's kind of pushed me to be even more, diligent about that. And so anyway, Suzi, thanks for being here. And I want to start by just, letting you introduce yourself, share a little bit about how you got into this space because, you have this wonderful blog and a great Instagram account, and this is really, what you talk about all the time. So how did you get there?
Yeah. Thanks, Lauren. I love Lauren, by the way, and just she's helped me so much put what I knew as far as like knowledge of food and then just figuring it out with like strength training and macros. And I feel like that, like all of this is just like one big puzzle piece, you like put them all together and it just works so well. So
Yeah.
thank you for that because you are really like, you've changed my life and I know so
Oh,
many others. So if you guys haven't checked out Faster Way, do that because it truly is a life-changing program.
hmm.
And you just stick with it. So
Yeah.
yeah, I would say my journey started back in 2010. My mom got me a book. My background is in beauty and my degree was in like PR marketing from college, but I was doing beauty. It was like 2008 when I graduated college. So long story short, it was like really hard to find a job at the time. And I moved back to my state where I live, Washington State, and I had gone to school in Oklahoma. So it was just like a really, yeah, it's not always great when you do that, because you have a lot more connections where you go to school. Anyways, so I was doing hair again, and my mom got me a book for Christmas called No More Dirty Looks, and it was all about just what the beauty industry was putting in our products and what we were using. And I had been like a beauty fanatic forever. I remember like growing up going to Nordstrom Beauty Counter and just like, MAC was my thing, like
Yeah.
makeup and all the things, like loved it. Sephora, and I was just reading the book and like, what in the world? Like, this is crazy. Like, all these companies are just lying to us. And fast forward, my brother, he's actually a naturopathic physician. And so he really had gotten me turned on to all this stuff. He was like, you really need to switch out your products, like start using better stuff. Like you can't be using like, all this stuff all the time. And so I slowly just started, yeah, back then. I mean, there was like nothing back then, you guys. It was like coconut oil for everything, and
Right.
that, as we know, does not work. And so I just started swapping my products slowly, learning more, growing. And I had a lot of friends and family saying, like, you should start a blog because they were asking me questions. And so I ended up starting a blog, and here we are.
Yeah.
Like, well, I don't know. Yeah, 10 years later. So I'm just so passionate about it because like you said with your sister, there's just so many instances. I want to be able to just get people before they get to a point, right?
Hmm.
I want to get them now. Like I want to
Right.
really help them see, you can have more energy. You don't have to deal with these chronic issues. Like so many of our things that we deal with all the time could just be, eliminated just from detoxing our
Right.
lives. And I know a
Right.
lot of people just don't have that knowledge and it's not available to them or they just
Mhm.
haven't heard it yet. And so my mission is just to get it out there, get the message out there. Like these small tweaks really add up. I saw this reel the other day and I thought it was so true, but they said it's just a little this, we tell ourselves it's just a little that, it's just a little this, and it goes back and forth. But like think about in a year how much that adds up, in
Right.
our bodies and in our life. And so I think not to say that we don't have balance and we don't have, things that we still do that are fun or whatever, but I think if you can really just think about certain small tweaks you can make daily, it really does add up over time.
Yeah,
So
it does. And I don't know if you've read the book The Slight Edge, but
I have.
it's really good. Oh, good.
It's
It's so good.
amazing.
And
It's like one
you
of my
just,
favorites. Yeah.
yes, so good. Everybody should read it. I mean, it's just
100%.
phenomenal.
Yes.
But, that reminds me of him saying, these things are easy to do. They're also easy not to do.
Yes.
But in the same sense, like this whole, like, you know, it's not going to happen overnight. You can't just
Right.
uphold your whole entire life in one day. It
Right.
takes time. It takes, small actions over time to end up, getting to a place where you want to be. And it can just be really overwhelming. It can be expensive to swap out products and whatnot. And so I think a lot of times people just kind of get overwhelmed by it and shut down and don't do anything. Like, where do I even start? And so I'm so glad that you're going to share that. But my ideal life is like living on a farm, having my own chickens, churning my own milk, drinking
Yeah,
raw milk and making my
totally.
sourdough and like all this stuff. And I'm like, well, that's not reality. Okay, that's not my reality, at least not in this point in my life. Maybe down the road. but
Yeah.
but it is so glamorous and it looks so wonderful. But that's to me, like when I think like toxin free life and healthy, it's like, oh my gosh, I am not at that point in my life where that is realistic for me. And I think a lot of people probably feel the same way.
Yes.
So, let's, get into why detox is so important, and then let's talk about how do we slowly incorporate this. Where do we start? What are the most important things?
Yeah, I think that's such a good point you brought up though about how, okay, maybe people think you have to go move on land or whatever, and it's like, no, you can actually just start where you're at. I live on half of an acre, and like, ideally, yes, we want land someday, but it's like we have a garden in our backyard, right? Like we do what we have, we get raw milk from a local farmer. Like it's not like you have to do all this stuff in order to be, quote unquote natural or whatever. You can just start where you're at, and it makes a big difference. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I would say like the three categories I always think about when people are detoxing is like your food and like your environment, your living space, and then your beauty products. I think those are like the three heavy hitters, and like food being number one. And obviously, you talk about food all the time. I think we're in a culture where just eating real food is like not the norm anymore.
Right.
And like whole real foods is just not on our plate. And I always just encourage people like you don't have to think about like cooking every single meal or like trying to, I'm in a meal prep for a day or whatever. You actually had a really good reel on this the other day. I thought was great because it really doesn't take that much time. I think we've been conditioned to think it's going to be this really overwhelming thing, and it doesn't have to be. Actually, food is so simple if we make it
Right.
for whole foods. But I think that, yeah, just by starting with like the basics of like, I'm going to cook one meal a week starting now, or I'm going to just cook twice a week and use real whole foods and not, grab something out of the freezer or whatever it is, or avoid seed oils. Like seed oils are a huge thing. I mean, if you're buying packaged foods, chances are you're probably eating seed oils, and those can wreak havoc on our bodies and like what they do to so many things. And I think if even just getting those out or just being more conscious, like, hey, I'm not going to buy that packaged food anymore because it has seed oils in it, and like I don't want to do that to my body. Um, there's a website, Dr. Kate. She wrote a book called Deep Nutrition. I highly recommend if anyone wants to deep dive into like seed oils and just nutrition in general, real nutrition. She's a phenomenal writer, and she wrote this book. I've read it a couple of times, but she talks about, I think it's like the Hateful Eight, and it's the seed oils that she goes over. And if you type in her name and like seed oils, it'll come up on her website if you want to read more. But I would say that's like a huge thing because those are just rampant.
Mhm.
Um, I think she equates it to like smoking a pack of cigarettes, basically, when you are, having those seed oils,
Wow.
just eating them constantly. So it's a big deal, like a really,
Yeah.
really big deal. I also just think, yeah, like I said, how can we just do this really simple? Like start cooking more meals at
Yeah.
home, going out less. Like anytime you eat out, you're going to be one, probably eating more food than you should, and two, eating a lot of like seed oils. And then I think too, just try to think, I think people are like, oh, it's too expensive. And I'm always like, if you avoid the processed food, chances are you're going to save so much money,
Yes.
and you won't even, it won't be a big deal because
Right.
when I go around and think of all the packaged items that are organic, I mean, those are so expensive compared to
Mhm.
just buying a banana or, like just vegetables or whatever, just whole foods.
Right.
And so I know we get hung up on like wanting to have organic food. While I think organic food is great, and yes, you're ingesting less pesticides, I think there's a balance where you can really find non-organic food that still is a lot healthier,
Yeah.
in the long run. Like I'm always going to recommend buy the real food over the packaged food.
Right.
And one way is through like EWG does their yearly like clean 15 and then their dirty dozen list. And so
Yep.
you can check those out. The dirty dozen means they're like highly sprayed with pesticides, while the clean 15 is like items that maybe they're not organic, but they're a lot cleaner because they have a thicker peel or they're
Mhm.
just not sprayed as much. And so there's so many workarounds, right? Like it's just kind of getting your feet wet. Like I always tell people, how do you eat an elephant? It's like one bite at a time, right? It's the same with going natural or like losing weight or whatever, right? Like you just do it a little bit at a time. You don't look at the whole picture and think like, how am I gonna do this? You do it day
Right.
by day, right? Like those little habits add up no matter what. And I always tell people, time is gonna go on, right? Like
Mhm.
there will be another 6 months, so you can either change or you can stay the same. Like who doesn't want to change and
Right.
grow? And so I think why not be better than you were, even if it's little, even if you can only do a little thing, right?
Yep.
It all adds
And
up.
this nutrition is like it you that is so important, your nutrition, and that can solve so many problems in terms of the inflammation that we have and the overload
Yes.
of toxic overload that we have, filling up that barrel. And to keep it very simple, I teach my clients single ingredient foods. That's what you should
Yes.
be eating at least 80% of the time are those single ingredient foods. And the packaging on foods can get very glamorous, and you can think,
Yes.
oh, well, I'm eating, healthy because it says organic, it says it's sugar free, it says it's gluten free, it says blah blah. When in reality, it's really what is inside those
Right.
packaged foods that really matters, makes it, more ultra processed versus minimally processed. But sticking with those things that are just single whole foods,
Yes.
majority of the time is really going to cut down on the amount of inflammation and the added, preservatives
Yeah.
and the oils that you're talking about and the added sugars and things that we have in those products that even sometimes seemingly appeal to, the customer that they are healthy, but
Yeah.
may not always be. And when you eat whole foods, you're going to fill up so much faster. So,
So much.
the amount of processed foods that you have to purchase, you just keep running through it. So I can absolutely see where, focusing on those basic whole food meals. I always say, just if you just have a protein, a vegetable, and a carbohydrate on
Yes.
your plate, like you're doing it. It doesn't have to be fancy and elaborate and incorporating all these ingredients that you normally wouldn't, have in your pantry or your refrigerator. Anyways, just make it very basic, and you're going to fill up because of the fiber and the micronutrients and vitamins and minerals and all of those things. And those are foods that are anti-inflammatory, foods that are going to
Right.
be helping you detox, as you mentioned, from all of these chemicals and things that we kind of just, it's like our body just gets overloaded with that
Oh
when
yeah.
we are consuming it, when we're putting it in our skin, when we're breathing it in. So that's a really good place to start. What's your next tip?
Yeah. I was just gonna say too, I think with like food, like the more you eat real food, the more you crave it. Like I don't think about I want to just like buy a bag of chips and down them. Like it's just I literally crave like the protein and just like the food, the real food. And I think a lot of
Mhm.
times we just have to change our taste buds over time. Like the more you eat real food, the more you'll crave it. It's like
Yep.
anything, like the more you work out, the more like, man, I get energy when I work out versus thinking the opposite. So
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, I think too, when it comes to environmental toxins, like I always tell people, it's like water, fragrance, air quality, and cleaning products. Because I think those are things that we obviously have to drink water every day. We're breathing the air, and we're cleaning pretty consistently. We should.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think fragrance is huge because it's in everything now. I mean, fragrance is in trash bags now. It's just
Yeah.
crazy, artificial fragrance. So, I mean, in crayons, there's fragrance everywhere. And I think we've become so accustomed to like having everything smell like something that we don't even know what fresh air smells like because we've been so conditioned.
Right.
And so I would just say, like, what has fragrance? Like, are you having those Glade plugins everywhere? Are you having, artificial
Mhm.
candles everywhere? Chances are, if you're buying candles from any mainstream store, they have artificial fragrance. So you don't
Yeah.
even have to like check. They just probably are.
Right.
But like getting those out of your home alone can be so huge for people's health. I mean, I can tell you stories of people that just by removing fragrance alone, like their headaches went away, like their dizziness, like
Wow.
just so many things changed just by getting that fragrance out because they were just inundated.
Mhm.
I mean, it literally gets baked into the walls of homes.
Right.
I'll go into
It's
them
insane.
and like instantly you can just smell that artificial fragrance. So
Yeah.
anytime you have things in your car too and you're constantly breathing that, that's another thing, you just want to like get those out. So I would say artificial fragrance, just try to like get rid of that. Use essential oils if you want, something to smell good. I have a whole candle blog post on my blog on natural alternatives for candles that
Great.
are made with good ingredients. Because also candles you have to think about are made with paraffin, which is a petroleum. So you're literally just breathing that in all day,
Yeah.
which is horrible. So there's so many things to candles, but yeah, there's so many great alternatives. You can get a diffuser, you
Hmm.
can get better candles. I think
Yeah.
too with air, a lot of people don't realize the air quality is a big thing. Like,
Yeah.
I know that it is costly to invest in an air filter, and so I didn't even get one until almost 4 years ago because I get it. You guys are like spendy, but um, I would say the one of the best things you can do is just open your windows in the morning. Even the EPA has said just by opening your windows, letting fresh air in for like an hour, closing them, doing it again at night, like it is so huge because our homes are filled with VOCs and all this, toxins from just building materials and things we bring in, and we don't off gas any of that. And so we're just constantly like re-breathing this
Yep.
air. And so I think it's one of those categories a lot of people just forget. So just a quick, easy, free thing is just open a window, let the fresh air in.
That's great.
Or off gas things that you get if you get like a new mattress or a new piece of furniture or something, just leave it out in the sun, let it bake. It really can help off gas
Hmm.
a lot of those fumes naturally. So that's another tip.
Um,
And then oh,
oh,
go
sorry.
ahead.
I was just going to say I got rid of candles in my home like, about 12 years ago or whenever it was when I discovered essential oils, and I can almost not tolerate now being in a room
Same.
where people are burning candles or like the scented things that spray into the air or the stick in the wall. I mean, it's like immediately I can't breathe, and I like feel nauseous almost, and
Yes.
it gives me a headache. It's so wild. But yeah, that was a big one for me. And we definitely, like you said, it's a big investment, but two of the biggest investments that I have made, in which it's like what it's food that you eat, it's the air that you breathe, it's the
Yeah,
water that you drink. I think are those three
totally.
things. If you can, start there, and those are things that you do every single day in mass
Yes,
quantity, right?
yes.
So we, we got an air purifier for our rooms, and then we also did the water filter, which you guys, it is a game changer. Like,
Yeah.
um, I can't even drink regular water anymore from like a restaurant because I'm like, this is so gross. But
Yes.
yeah, like starting with those things can make a massive impact, really.
Yeah. And I would say try to like avoid plastic water bottles too.
Hmm.
I think that's a huge one. I know it can be hard for people, but just buy a reusable stainless steel water bottle. One, you're going to save money in the long run. Yep. And then just like fill it up, get a really good water filter because those water bottles, chances are the water's really not filtered. And then you're drinking a lot of
Yep.
microplastics, which can lead to other, hormonal issues. So I would say like that's a huge, huge thing too
Mhm.
when you're drinking water. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay, so as far as all right, so we've got our food we're gonna fix, and then we're gonna start with our, air and water, removing plastics. I mean, I've, started with like my cookware. That was a big one, I think,
yeah,
because again, that's if you are cooking at home, as you should be most of the time, you're using that, constantly. So replacing cookware with non-toxic, I think, is a big one. And then like
yeah.
any of the plastic, utensils like drinking glasses or even containers that you put your food in. And that was a big one for us, is just kind of removing
Yeah.
all of that and going with glass and stainless steel. But, you know, after that, we can start getting into our products. So where do you start? What recommendations do you have there?
Yeah, I was just going to give people a quick little stat. Like the average person, so this could be more or less, you could fall into, on the other category, but the average woman puts on like 9 products a day. And of those nine, it's like 100 and I think it was 26, yeah, chemicals that
Oh,
you're exposing yourself to daily.
yeah.
So if you can just imagine like that's the average person. Obviously, I probably tend to be a little higher, maybe on the beauty category, and I'm sure there's people that are lower, but like that's a huge stat if you think about like how often we are exposing ourselves to these products and what are they doing to us? What's happening? And so I always tell people with beauty, it can feel overwhelming at first because you're like, where do I start?
Hmm.
I got to spend all this money. And I'm like, you don't. You don't. Just start with one product a month even or the first product that, you use up and is gone. So say you run out of your mascara, just go and find a cleaner version. Same thing with like toothpaste or whatever it might be, just slowly swap out one product at a time. It doesn't need to be this complete overhaul. If it's not in the budget, like don't stress about it. Um, I think also a lot of people will be like, well, I don't know where to find these products.
Hmm.
How do I know what's clean, what's good? And I would say there's a couple apps I would recommend. There's like EWG Skin Deep. It's a great place to start. You can literally put in any ingredient and it will tell you like how it rates as far as clean or if there's, issues with it, what they should be aware of. There's also a couple other ones that you can get called Yuka. There's the Think Dirty app is really good as well. You can actually get the EWG app, and I think it's called Healthy Living app, and you can get that on your phone. So you could literally just a lot of them you can scan products, and it'll tell you if it's rated well or not. So that's a great place to start. Another
Yeah.
one is follow people like me, Lauren. I know there's a lot of people out there sharing this information. I have an ingredients to avoid list. It's a free guide you guys can download, where it will show like tell you basically, okay, this is the reason why you want to avoid this ingredient, what it does to your body, where you might find it on products. And so that's a great place to start too, because then you just, the more information you know, the better.
Mhm.
Obviously, like anything, it's like starting counting macros. It's not going to be perfect at first, right? Like
Yep.
you're not going to know everything, but it's just little by little in a year, 2 years, you're going to know right away looking at the back of an ingredient label whether it's good or not. You just even now it's like, okay, if it has 3 ingredients, like if it has fragrance or pegs or different ones I automatically see, I just know to put it back on the shelf, right? Like,
Yep.
so it's like anything. The more you do it, the more you work the muscle, the more it's going to become just like second nature. So
Right. Right. I just recently swapped out, I guess within this year, swapped out my deodorant. That was interesting.
I love that.
So
Yes.
I still it like does I mean I think I just need to detox more. But I still like oh perimenopause is interesting because I think that it changes the way that you smell, like your body odor. I swear something is different there. But I am loving my new deodorant. It's the oh shoot, what's it called? You probably know.
Primally
That's it.
pure, or is it?
Yeah,
Yes.
that's it.
Okay.
Yeah,
I think you
it's
had mentioned, yeah.
yeah, it's taken me some getting used to, but I am proud of that swap.
No, and honestly, Lauren, that is one of the biggest swaps I tell people to
Yeah,
make because it really is like we have been trained to think like our bodies aren't meant to sweat, like because
yeah,
that's typically what conventional deodorant is. It's like antiperspirant or whatever.
right.
But you should be sweating. Like that is normal. That's our body's way of detoxing,
Yeah.
right? So if you're not sweating, like where are all those, chemicals in our body and toxins going? They're just staying in our body. And they have even found studies have shown that like in breast cancer, like the upper quadrant is where they find
Hmm.
the breast cancer.
Yeah,
And it doesn't say like it's equating to, conventional deodorant, but I think it lays a case for like, okay, well, if we're blocking those pores and we're not allowing our body to naturally detox, then
hmm,
what's happening there? They're
right.
just staying stagnant, right?
Yep.
And so it's really important, one, like you said, make the switch, but it does take a while. And I will tell people too, I just did a reel on this, but there's a lot of great ways that you can actually detox because it takes I would say like 6 to 8 weeks for your body to kind of like detox from if you were using conventional deodorant for a long time. Just because your pores were blocked, you may need to do some like bentonite clay mask underneath your underarms, or
Hmm.
you might need to just, wear like, make sure you're wearing like clothing that's breathable for a little bit. So don't give up. You might need to swap deodorants too every now and then. I tell people too, don't just, sometimes people are like, it's not working anymore. And I'm always like, just switch. Sometimes it helps just to switch the deodorants I
Right.
found when it comes to more natural deodorants.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, don't give up.
Yeah. And then I also, I think that, so here's how I've approached this whole trying to remove toxins is to start with the big things. Okay. So
Yeah.
that's, obviously I feel like food is up there and we talked about air and water and then I think another big one for me is the household cleaning products, like you said.
Yes.
I'm not quite there on the makeup yet. I've got to work on that. Some things, yes, not all, but
Yeah.
like skincare stuff, I need to work on that. But laundry detergent, getting rid of those dryer sheets, I feel like that's a big one. The
Yeah.
pods that you put in your dishwasher, the soap that you use to clean your dish,
Yes.
those things I think can make a big impact because again, it's like things that you do often. It's like
Yeah.
the big things. I'm a family of five and we do like so much laundry. It is just ridiculous. I'm like, what do you
I
guys
hear you.
change your clothes 15 times a day? Like what is happening? But laundry is a big one. So,
Yeah.
that to me was a big important swap.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Well, and that's such a good point because laundry's a big one because it not only affects obviously us, but like the environment. I mean, so much of what we're, off after it washes, it's like going into our waterways and water streams, and then we're getting it back in our water, right? Like the
Hmm.
microplastics and all of that. So it's really
Yeah.
important, even from an environmental perspective, to make the switch.
Yeah, exactly. Are there any other recommendations that you have for us you wanted to share today?
Yeah, I was just gonna say of as far as like if you guys want a place to start, I do have a natural living guide that it is $17. It's on sale, but it's like over 66 pages if they really want to deep dive into like I mean we talk about water filtration, bedding, cleaning products,
Oh,
like
awesome.
it's everything. So
Yeah.
it's like in one place for people if they don't want to like have to, sort through my blog or anything, or if you
Hmm.
just want it in one place. And that's in my LinkedIn profile. And then I do have a free guide on ingredients to avoid, and then a free guide on detoxing your home for free. There's like 10 steps you can do. Literally, it's not going to cost you anything. It's just like free things you can do to really live out a more just natural life.
Amazing.
And that's on my website. So
Yep.
yeah, I think those are great places to start. Again, follow people that are doing it. Don't get overwhelmed. I think
Hmm.
that's one of the biggest things I hear from people is just the overwhelm, and that's why I
Yeah.
tell people just do one thing at a time.
Right.
Um, and don't feel like you need to like do an overhaul right away. Like I didn't do that. Like I'm, 15 years in and I'm still learning. I learn every day.
Hmm.
I'm like getting better, like you, I love your approach too, Lauren, because you're so balanced about it. Like I think, okay, maybe you haven't done your makeup and skin, but like
Yeah.
you've done so many other areas, and I think that's a reasonable way to do it,
Right.
right? And so just to encourage people, don't feel like you aren't doing enough or
Yeah.
shaming yourself. That's not what we're about. It's just doing better,
Right.
a little bit at a time.
Right.
So
So definitely make sure you guys are following Girl Gone Green. It's GURL Gone Green. And I would highly recommend that you get her guide because that is the question. The number one question is like, well, okay, I want to swap out XYZ, but what are the brands that actually qualify instead of having to do all of your own research? She's done it for you. So let her do the work for you. And all you have to do is start, kind of going through that list and maybe checking off, things as you start to replace different items in your house. So this was so amazing. Thank you so much for joining me
yes,
today and for sharing your wisdom with us. I know that we could all, certainly benefit from, starting to live a little more toxin free. And I do think that this conversation is one that's we're having more now.
yeah,
Everybody's kind of waking up and realizing, oh my goodness, what is in our food, what is in our water,
yes,
what is in our air, and how can we, do our best as an individual or family just to, counteract, all the things that are out there. So this was fantastic. I hope you guys enjoyed it and learned so much. Be sure to check out her Instagram, her website, her blog has so many great free resources for you, and I think that you guys will be on the right path to a
yeah.
toxin-free life. This is great.
One step at a time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. All right. Thank you so much,
Yes.
Susie. I'll talk to you
Thanks,
soon,
Lauren.
and everyone have a great day. Bye, gang.
Thanks, guys.